Jeannie, are you able to
I
hear us?
cleaned a couple of barns.
Jamie. There it is. Jeannie, can you hear us? Good, okay.
Yep, can you hear me okay? Is that good or is that too loud?
That's loud, but we can turn it down on our end, I think.
Okay.
Good for me. Yeah, that seems very good. Talk again? Try again?
Hi, everyone. Good evening.
Hi, great, perfect.
Hi.
Good evening.
Freddie, you can start.
We need one, are we ready for one more?
Actually, I'm sorry, 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Your time is different than the actual.
2 minutes.
The video quality in your room is really, really awesome. Between the cameras, I love the panoramic at the top. What kind of a system do you have? Do you know?
Sometimes it's good, sometimes it causes problems.
It's a what?
Called owl, they have the little microphones,
Yes.
speakers, but they look like owls.
Yes, and that's exactly what I wondered if it was, because I looked into that system, that it's really good. It lives up to all the hype.
Just don't look too closely.
Do you have any idea how expensive it is?
No idea. To the Environmental Advisory Council. Call the meeting to order and shall we pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we're nearly all here.
Yeah, just Ken and Pat are absent,
Yes,
but we do have a quorum.
we have a quorum. And we're off. We have minutes to approve.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of September 17th.
Second.
Minutes are approved. And we have announcements.
We have to vote on that.
Oh, sorry. We're gonna vote on the minutes approval. Aye.
Yep, aye.
Aye. Thank you. Announcements, we got an upcoming BOS and PC joint meeting. The sign ordinance discussion on Thursday, October 17th. That's 2 days, at 7 PM. Is that being advertised? Must be. Right?
Yes, it has to be.
Yeah, and also in your, to the left of your binders, you have a little QR code that brings you right to the draft ordinance. So for those of you who'd like to attend, or you may not be able to attend, you want to still review that document and learn about what the supervisors and planning commission are going to discuss, that is a great way to access it directly.
That's definitely still draft mode. It's not been reviewed by all the supervisors, just me and Dave Strunk and Alex are the ones that drafted it so far.
Which one is that?
The sign ordinance that we're discussing on Thursday.
Thanks.
Okay. And we have a save the date for the Smithfield Township Trunk or Treat Fall Fest to be held October 26th at 1:24 PM. And I think we have a flyer for that, if not with a QR code as well.
We need more trunks.
We need more trunks, so we're thinking about putting together something for the EAC. I don't know what we're gonna trunk, but we'll sit and smile and ask questions or answer questions.
Candy.
Candy.
You need to bring that part.
Candy, all
I
right,
have hundreds of little pumpkins I can do together. Perfect.
all right.
I think I probably have like 200 tiny pumpkins.
Oh, wow.
200.
Yeah.
We should.
There might not be room in the trunk for 200. Well, I'll just bring them and drop them off. I'm not gonna be able to be here. I leave Saturday morning, but I'll definitely drop those off.
Oh.
And I'm away that weekend, unfortunately.
Maybe we can get a rake and make a pile of leaves for the kids. All right. We have old business to discuss. We've invited a speaker. I'll let Alex pick up on this.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. Yep, we have a speaker. Jeannie, who's going to. I'm gonna let Jeannie introduce herself, but, we're gonna have an E-code ordinance tutorial. And I'm gonna make you host so that you can share your screen. And I'll go ahead and let you take it away as soon as I give you that permission. Okay, you should be able to share your screen.
Awesome. I'm gonna do that now. And move a couple of things out of the way. So I think,
Could you introduce yourself, please?
oh yes, I'm Jeannie. I'm the trainer here at General Code. I've been with General Code for about 8 years, and this is what I do all the time. I help people understand more about how to get the most out of their E-code sites. We have about 3,500 municipalities across the United States that use E-code, 700 of which are in Pennsylvania. So I'm in Pennsylvania quite a bit, helping out. And I've shared my screen right now with you. I'm really easygoing, so if anything comes up and you have questions, just go ahead and interrupt me. I thought a good place to start would be on the township's website. So how do people, and when I say people, I mean everyone from you to me to your citizens, how do they access E-code? And here from your website, I noticed that we have a resources tab, and one way is to get through it right here. There could be other links, but when you hit E-code, it drops you off on the code page. Right now, you can see from my screen that I'm logged in because there's a little person there. I'm going to log out for a second and show you. So if you do not have a username and a password for E-code, you are going to look at E-code like your citizens can. And to help us, this is something I can share with you later, but just as a point of reference right now, I'm going to make this really kind of tiny so you can't read it, but the idea is to let you know there are some features here yellow that everyone gets. No login is required. Everyone can read, search, print, download the code, email a question of the code. That all comes, what I'll say, for free. There's no login required. Now, you all, in my estimation, should be municipal users. You should be able to get everything the public can do. But when you log in, you get access to these features over here that are sort of highlighted in orange. The most popular thing people ask for a login for is that right there. I want to be able to download a portion of the code to Word because maybe we're going to draft a new ordinance and we're going to want to change what's there and not have to retype it. Another thing that people are often looking for is the ability to do research. What are other townships in Pennsylvania doing in their code regarding the banning of plastic bags or the flying of drones in parks or whatever? And you can do that sort of research. All of these features that you see here in orange are what you get when you get a login. If you are the administrator for the code, and usually there's a few within the township of administrators, these are the people that manage the users, right? They add new users so people can log in. And then there's other features. This is just a starting point, and I wanted to tell you because if you don't log into E-code right now, you might have wondered, well, why do I need a login? So I'm going to log in right now just so I have access to all the features as we're going through this. But what Alex talked to me about is oftentimes you might be looking for a specific ordinance or something in the code, and it might be helpful to have some search tips.
Maybe
And that's very, yes.
Yeah, just pause for 1 second. There's a question.
Yeah, I'm not sure how we're supposed to raise questions, and it doesn't seem quite right to interrupt, but if you want to be able to log in, how do you get login credentials?
That would be from the
Okay.
township.
So you
So-
can ask the township, but friends, you can also ask me right here. When you click the login button, right in the middle of the page, it says, don't have an E-code login, request one. And that comes to me as the trainer. And I will then add you as a user. So 2 things about users in case you're worried. 1, it does not cost the township any money at all. And 2, no one can change the code. There's no liability that somebody would do something you can't. It's locked down. It's a read-only site. So having login credentials gets you ability to do your job better.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions while we're right on this topic?
Nope, carry on.
Carry on. Okay, so searching is the most popular thing anybody does with E-code. So I'm going to do some tips. So I promise you that. But before I do, I want to give you a little orientation. There's a part of E-code you might not have seen before. Like I said before, when you go from your website to the code, it drops you on this page. And here you are. And this is the important stuff. This is your code. There is also another page. It's called the home page. And I noticed that your home page has been customized. All of your resolutions are up here. The township is doing a beautiful job of utilizing the public documents portal. So the township administrators can upload documents. And so I thought, I wonder what we do upload. So I'm going to come over here in the black menu bar and go to public documents, and I can see that 564 resolutions have been uploaded. And then I was like, I wonder if these folks know that many of the ordinances have been uploaded. If I click on that, I can see there's a category of all the past ordinances. And I'm going to just click here because there's over 200 of them. And that's it. You can get to all of them or just the past ordinances. And this is fully searchable, my friends. And if you want to get to an ordinance, you can just click on it right there and you get to see the raw legislation. So should you have needed to get to the raw legislation, it's all up here, but you can also use the search feature to get to it. So now I am going to go back to your code and talk about some of those search terms. So one thing is, if you know the ordinance number that you're looking for, then right up here in the enter a search term, if you're looking for ordinance number 122, you can type 122 and press enter. And then everything that matches that, there are 6 places in the code where it mentions the number 122. And you can see right from the snippet here, the history section in water conservation standards, that's where ordinance 122 landed. If you want to see the raw document, like I showed you before, there's ordinance number 122. And of course, there's resolution number 122 because all we typed in was 122. That's me pausing just to see if anyone wants to jump in.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to, yes, go ahead.
No, thank you.
So now I'm going to show you a common mistake, and perhaps you've done this, and this is where you might have some frustration. So I type in my search term. I want to find ordinance 122. So I just type that. That seems like that should make sense. And you get 438 results. And so this is the piece of information. When you type, I'll say stuff in the search bar, and it's multiple words or numbers separated by a space, E-code thinks you want to look up anything that either has ordinance in it or it has 122 in it. And so you get 438 results because everything that has an ordinance in it just popped up. So watch the difference here. Ordinance and 122. We go from 438 results down to 3. So putting the word "and" in between your search. So if you wanted to see if there was a building permit fee anywhere in our code, building and permit and fee, we get 17 results, 14 of them are here in the code. And what we've told E-code now is I want you to show me any legislation that contains all 3 of those words. Now, I'm going to show you another common thing that people try and they're like, why didn't that work? So common thing people will put in quotation marks, building permit fee. And then we go from 3 results down to none, because when you put quotation marks around something, you're telling E-code, I want you to find these 3 words exactly in this order, sitting next to each other. It's not my favorite hot tip, but if you were searching for, I'll just use an example from where I live, Jefferson Road School. Well, then that's a good thing to put in quotation marks, because you know that if it's Jeff Road, it's going to be called Jefferson Road School. If it's legislation, like building permit fee, the way your solicitor often writes that is something like this. There shall be a fee for anyone submitting a permit for a building project, right? So building permit fee, it's about it, but they don't sit next to each other. Honest to goodness, that's it. I'm thinking there's one other thing that E-code has. When I was talking with Alex, and I just put it in the back of my brain about, well, they might like to see this too. I'm going to go to the top of your code. Clicking on that link right there that says current gets me to the top of your code. I don't know if you all have noticed this. I'm going to kind of zoom right in on this. The very top line of your code tells you and your citizens how up to date your code is. So this code is includes all legislation through April of this year. Another thing that's neat is that date is actually a link. It's a link to another part of your code. So if I click on that date, it takes me to something called the disposition list. And this is a list of all of the ordinances the township has ever submitted to general code for consideration in your code. So it is a chronological list, and it took me to the bottom of the list. And if I keep scrolling here, I can see, and it's got resolutions and ordinances in it. This is something that we've created for you, and the whole idea is for somebody to be able to say, hey, did we ever send ordinance number 64 into general code, and where did it land? You should be able to use this disposition list. There's ordinance 64. It was about license fees. It's in chapter 1, part 3. If a piece of legislation has been superseded or repealed, you'll know that there. If a piece of legislation does not go in the code, and I'm struggling to find one, all of your stuff does go in the code, it will say NCM, not code material. But everything here seems to be in the code. Later on, we decided to add another column to the disposition list. So if you look at very recently, we've also now included the adoption date, a little bit about what it's about and where it landed in the code. It is the very last chapter of your code. You can see me pointing to it down here. So just to prove that to you, I'm gonna go to the top of your code. Here's your most current date. And if I scroll to the bottom of your code, the very last thing in it is the key to the disposition of all ordinances and resolutions. And it takes you to that table. Now let me throw it back at you. Has anybody in the room had frustration with trying to find something that one of these hot tips hasn't solved yet? Because I'm happy to do that.
I'll ask a question. I often have trouble with the map, and the code, and sometimes, you know, attachments that are related to the code
Yeah.
can be tough to navigate.
So I'm going to open up someone else's code because that problem came up and I helped them solve it, and you have a look at it. So they had problems with attachments on their zoning chapter. Their zoning map was there, their use table, their bulk requirements were there, and people couldn't find them. So the difference between their code and your code is it's got notes all over it. In fact, it's got 6 notes. Wherever there is a note in the code, there's a little icon out here. So if I click here on chapter 5 and open animal control as an example, in the licensing section, there's a note here that allows the user to easily click a link, and that takes them right to the dog and cat license application. And that is something that I can create for you, but you guys, when I say you, I mean the township has the ability to do this. And there's, like I said before, their main pain point was in their zoning chapter. So I'm going to go down to their zoning chapter here. And you can see, probably just like you, they've got a bunch of attachments up at the top of the code. And the problem is you get down here to where it says the zoning map has been established. And it says here that, you know, it's included as an attachment to this chapter, but it's so much easier to say, click here to view the map. They click, they find it, and they're all happy. So I'm going to go back to your code for a minute and see if that's exactly what we're talking about. Let's see, where is your land use and zoning right there? So the zoning map seems to be the only attachment here. Are there other attachments in your code?
I don't think so, but you know what, I think that must have been updated because, I'm thinking about a couple of years ago, I was having trouble, so they barely fixed it.
And the other thing that we've done as of late, because people were really struggling with attachments, is lots of times it's now a link. So if it's in little letters, I don't like it quite as much as I do a note, but there is actually a link there. So if they get down there, it pops this box and then they can click on the zoning map to get it. I'm just going to take a quick look at your code and see if there are other attachments that might be a problem. If I use the advanced search here, I can tell eCode, show me just the attachments that are a part of this code. There are 16. The fee schedule, are you kidding? The fee schedule is in there as an attachment? That's a great note to add. A lot of stormwater. So anything that's in here as an attachment, you can put a note to make it more front and center. Another thing we could do is that fee schedule really strikes me. Don't you think that the residents are looking for that fee schedule on the regular? Or no, am I wrong?
Yeah, I think it's on the main webpage too, though.
Okay, good. And is it on your main code page? Because here we could have a link that just says fee schedule. A lot of places do that and they could get to that. So if you're having trouble finding anything, my go-to is let's put a note with a link in it, but then there are other options as well.
Get a map there too, once there.
I like the layout of the note. It's a really easy visual grab.
Jeannie, can I ask a question? Just for the sake of folks who are looking for something, just to first time looking at the code and they have a question about sidewalks. Just, somebody comes in with a land development plan and they want to know what the code says about sidewalks. And I was wondering if maybe you'd humor us and just kind of give us a walkthrough of how to find anything in the code that relates to sidewalks. The sidewalks have been something that's been discussed here at the township from time to time. And it might be a good way to just kind of use an example to try to dig into the code to see what it says about that subject. Would you be willing to do that?
Yes, absolutely. So this is exactly how I would attack it. First of all, I'm thinking to myself, well, do I know what chapters sidewalks would be in? And then I'm like, yeah, I don't know this code that well, so I'm not going to. I'm going to come up here first. I'm just going to go straight with sidewalk. I'm going to say, go look for it. Then this is the hot tip, friends. You see there's 40 results. The thing that's not apparent is what you really want to do is click on these 38 code results, because when you do then, first of all, you can click this filter by location. Well, I don't care what it says in the adopting ordinance about sidewalks. Maybe I don't care about the animals chapter, but I can I say, oh, well, wait, there's a whole chapter on streets and sidewalks. I definitely want to see those 3. And well, there's 10 in subdivision and land development. I'll have a look at those too. But there's a way to filter it so that you get the pertinent information about sidewalks. If you're building a property and you don't care about any of this, then you're probably going to go to chapter 13 on licenses, permits, and general regulations as you're building a property out.
Sorry, we're just trying to let somebody in to the meeting. 1 second.
Sure.
Oh, they're gone.
It was me, because I can't see the screen. So I was trying to just,
Okay.
but it's like, it just keeps saying the host is trying to let you.
There's other people too. Should sit here.
Yeah, maybe I will, that's a good idea.
You can continue.
Sorry about that.
So the other thing is when I'm going to go back to the original search results. We found 38 of them. You can filter by location. You can also filter by content type. So within sidewalks, you can see that most of the results are in the actual content, but 6 places a sidewalk has been defined, and that might have interest to you. Oh, how do we define what a sidewalk is, and where do we see that in other definitions? So there's really good filtering options. Once you do a search, then you want to click on the code results so that you get these extra filters. The flip side of it is, if you only care about what it says about sidewalks in the zoning chapter, that's what these checkboxes are out here. Or I can say, well, I want you to search subdivision and land development, streets and sidewalks, and zoning, just those 3. So now when I type in sidewalk, it does not search the entire code. It only searches those 3 chapters, and those are the results I get. I can still filter out, so I can say, I just want to see the results that were in the zoning chapter. You can click that and see them. So you can either start ahead of time and tell LeetCode, I only want you to search these chapters, or you can filter that out later.
Then could you just indulge me a little further? Can you click on one of those provisions and just kind of show the audience all the possibilities of the search results, what they look like? So
yep. So right from here, if you say, this is exactly what I was looking for, sidewalk and walkway requirements. Right here, this icon would allow you to print it out if you wanted to give someone paper, or this little envelope will open up your email and start an email. All you've got to do, I didn't have my email open, so it's taking a moment to do this. All you have to do is enter in their email address, and it brings them right to that place in the code. They don't have to know how to use E-code. They've got a link and they can follow it. If you back on my search results, if I click on any one of these results, it is going to zoom me right into that place in the code. And again, if this is what you were really looking for, that little checkbox right there allows you to select it. Again, you can email from here, or you could download this section either to PDF or Word if you wanted to amend it or begin the process for creating an ordinance. The other thing I like is, I don't know that any of you are in this position, but if I'm the code enforcement officer for the township and I need to cite 22-1015B, when I click on that B, it gives me a deep link right to that section. And now when I create an email or I print it out, it won't print the whole section. It'll just do B. If this was not the result you were looking for, you can go back to the results section, return to the results. You can scroll down further and choose a different one. And now it is going to take you right to that place in the code. In this same searchability, you have with all the municipalities across the United States. I don't know that you care about anyone else that's in, but other than Pennsylvania, but that multi-code button right there is what allows you to search all the 700 codes in Pennsylvania. Do you want me to do a quick multi-code search to show everyone how that would work?
Please.
Yeah.
So I'm going to click right there on multi-code, and I have to cheat. I can't remember where you are.
Is that
Smithfield, it's multi-code, so we're in Monroe County. And that's funny, I live in Monroe County, New York State. So I'm gonna go to your code. I'm just gonna go right to the beginning of your code. And the use case here is you might say, well, tell me what they have, you know, whatever the sidewalk discussion is, tell me what they have in other codes about whatever the issue is with sidewalks. So you have to log in for this feature, but it's right there, multi-code. When you click it, you will know you're not in your code anymore because the screen changes completely. As I said earlier, you're looking at all the codes across the United States. So the first thing you might do is come over here to the state field and say, okay, E-code, just show me Pennsylvania. And well, wait a minute, we're a township, so just show me townships in Pennsylvania. Are you a second-class township?
Yes.
So I can even do that. I can say, all right, show me everybody in Monroe County. So, and you can see what it's doing here. There are 10 other codes in Monroe County that are second-class townships. I can add those codes to my search with that little tiny plus sign. And then I can come here. What was it, Alex, about sidewalks? Can you give me another word?
Maybe in saldo requirements around sidewalks in the saldo.
I'm gonna go with just requirement. And because I can always narrow it down further. So I'm going with sidewalk and requirement. And right now it's searching 10 codes, and that quickly it'll tell you it found a lot of results. Many of them are in the public documents. So other places putting up their ordinances, minutes, resolutions, agendas, all that. We really only care about the code results. So there are 175 code results that have 2 words in them, sidewalk and requirement. I can say, well, I don't really want the definitions. I just want the content. So that's going to get me 162. And then I can say, well, whose codes am I looking at? And everybody has chimed in on this particular topic. But just like with your search results, you can read a little bit of them here. So I can tell this one comes from Chestnut Hill. If I click on it, it is going to do just like it does in your code. It's going to open up Chestnut Hill's code. It's going to take you right to that place in their code so you can read the whole thing. And just like you can in your own code, you can select it and download their code to either PDF or Word and bring that to your meetings and have a discussion. This is what so-and-so has in their code.
That's powerful.
It's, should be a good time saver. Yes, question?
I do. It might be more for the township people though. Are residents able to get a code to see some of these?
She just said, yeah, if you go on there and you request access, she can give you access.
So that comes from you, we can get a code? There's my question.
What will
The question-
happen is you can open up anyone's code. You can go to Chestnut Hill and open their code and search it. That's available to everyone. Read, search, print, download. You don't need a login for that. If you
Right.
wanted to use this feature that I just showed, I want to search a bunch of codes at one time, then you
Right.
have to have a login for that.
And is a resident able to get a login for that?
If the township officials agree to it, then yes. So what happens is, let's say somebody requests an email or a login. I'm gonna go look at something. These are the people that log in Smithfield. So they all have smithfieldtownship.com email addresses. So if you requested and you have a Gmail account like I do, I would call our main contact and I would say, hey, Sarah Brown's asking for a login. You know, is it okay if I add her? And I would just put your email address down here. And I don't know if you were here for this part of the meeting. Nobody can change the code and it doesn't cost the township any money. So most of the time they're like, sure, give anybody a login. But I always ask if somebody requests and they have that domain, I add them without question. If they have a more public email, like a Gmail or an iCloud account, I call in and ask our main contact.
Got it, thank you.
There might be phishing emails that we might not want to approve.
Understood,
Yeah.
of course,
So
yeah,
it's good if there's a,
absolutely.
Just a question, Alex, have you been using this?
I have.
Okay, that's because it sounds a lot like some of the searches you've talked about.
Julia's is I've sat with Julia
Julia,
doing, multi-municipality.
Right,
searches.
right.
When we looked at a couple of the ordinances.
Handy, yeah.
It's a lot of work to spend time and, but it's a lot, because a lot of content, right? You can look at everyone's codes in every town, 700 townships in Pennsylvania.
You could get lost in it. I
You
can
can
see that.
forever.
Yeah,
Yeah, there was a meeting that Doug was at where I talked about looking at the codes in Chester County for a particular standard and use, and that's multi-code is how I was able to confidently.
right, all I could think of was you, because a lot of our exposure to the code in the past has been, Ron Karasek saying, wait a minute, let me get the book. You know.
Well, he's looking at
The books, the ordinances.
yeah, sometimes he's looking at, yeah, he does look at the ordinance. sometimes.
Well, we have Salvo, and then we have the zoning ordinance book. So, yeah.
Sometimes he's looking at the class, the township class.
Right, no, I understand that.
Law, but, yeah, it's useful. I mean, I know Julia and I sat down looking at B and Bs. Well, what are the other townships? It looked like 6 others. What are the requirements that they
Right.
have?
Right,
Just to look at it. Try to get an understanding.
Things that you will get when you get a login is going to be very interesting, I think, to you. So I'm going to show it to you now. I'm using, when you get a login, over here in your black menu bar, you're going to get this little wrench in the word admin. You will go directly to the dashboard. Only the administrators see everything that I see. But this dashboard will be available to you, and it gives you some analytics about Smithfield's code. Are people using it? So in the last year, you're averaging probably around 2,000 hits a month. Right? So far in October, there's 1,700 hits. In the whole month of September, there were 2,400 hits. So you can hover over this and you can see the usage. What may be even more interesting to you is what people have been searching your code for. This is what the most popular searches have been in the last month, the last 30 days. over the last year. This is just a nice summary for you. So it does give you information as to, you know, as an example, people are looking for the setbacks. So I wonder if we have them in a prominent enough location where people can get information about setback. It comes in at number 6 and number 10. I see other essential building requirements like maximum height. So the bulk requirements maybe could be more prominent. I just thought you would think that was interesting. The other thing that you can do is change this graph to see when people are using your code. And even after normal business hours, as late as 9 o'clock at night, there's still 600 views on average. So having those notes in your code or making sure there are links so people can get the documentation that they need becomes real important. That was admin and right on the dashboard.
Well, that was exceedingly helpful, Jeannie. Unless there's any other questions, we will let you, give you back the rest of your night.
All right, awesome. And you're welcome to share my contact information with anyone there in the room. People are welcome to call or email me. This is what I do all the time. So you can throw me over a question. I'll get you taken care of right away.
Awesome, thank you so much. Before you hang up, let's make sure we get control back of our. There we go.
Awesome.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Let me see if there's anyone in the waiting room now. I think you couldn't do it because she was.
The button is not.
Oh, you're right.
It's because she had control, that's why I could see it.
Okay. Brett, the meeting is yours.
Thank you. All right, Alex, have you an update about the EAC tour, Penn Archel?
Yeah, I can give you an update. So based on your feedback, it looks like, there's this chair back. It looks like November 8th, which is a Friday at 9:30 a.m. works for the council. So this is a tour for township officials. I got at least responses from 4 or 5 of you that works. So basically, after this meeting, I'll send you all the address, but it's, you're all just gonna drive there and show up either by no later than 9:30. I recommend getting there 10 minutes early in case you have a little trouble finding the location. And then there will be, it's an hour and a half of the, what's the facility there that I think it's gonna be a learning experience for everybody, so.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, next item C, update feedback on EAC recommendations. Is this Alex?
Yeah, there really hasn't been any new recommendations. We are still on the lighting ordinance. We're still waiting for the planning commission to get a informal review. I did provide some, this is when I was going to talk about the handouts. I have a QR code with the sign ordinance. There's also a QR code for the 2002 open space plan, so that if you would like to learn a little bit about what was discussed for the Eastern Monroe plan back when that was a countywide initiative, I think there's a lot of good nuggets in there. And besides that, do you have any questions for me? Oh, I also gave you a copy of the fall stormwater tips, just so you can see what, you know, we're distributing to the public.
And at the last board of supervisors meeting, it was agreed that we were gonna come up with some sort of reporting mechanism by which whenever there are recommendations from either the planning commission or the EAC, there would be a formal mechanism by which we will report back sort of why, I mean, as was stated in that meeting, if you attend the board of supervisors meeting, you'll hear the feedback because it'll be there, but there will be a formal way of getting that back in case you cannot attend the board of supervisors. I don't know exactly how that will be. I think Julia is going to put together some sort of basic.
It's a great step in the right direction.
So
Yeah.
we did discuss it and we did agree to do that.
Will that be a periodic update or is it just an automatic?
I think if there's a formal recommendation that comes from either group, there will be a formal response.
Okay, great.
How is this being communicated within the township?
That is distributed out on
What is that?
the fall stormwater management tips.
Oh, yeah.
So I print those out and put them out on the foyer, if you call it that, and then I send it to the township and they are welcome to distribute it in their newsletters. And we should also be posting on the social media as well. So we do one of them for each season throughout the year. And I try to change the tips a little bit.
Does that automatically get done? That it gets posted on social media, that it gets sent out?
No, that's up to the discretion of the township. I can make I asked them to consider putting in their newsletter, so.
That would be administrative, so he would give that to Julia, and Julie would say, hey, we should put this up, and give it to Jacob, who is our webmaster, who would post that, I said.
Yeah, it goes up on the MS4 page as well.
I have a question about that. I'm seeing on the sewage mound, I think a lot of people who buy houses out here don't even realize or understand how to maintain the sewage mound. Is this something that we could get an outreach program for community-wide to educate people? Because that's an issue ongoing all over the township. Perhaps something we could table for another night.
It's a good segue into the next topic.
Okay.
If you look at some of the, one of the,
Priorities,
yeah, one of the priorities
Mhm.
was, education on sewage treatment and waste disposal.
Okay,
If you wanted, we just jump right into that.
just segue.
Okay.
So let's discuss the environmental problems, the prayers, EAC. I guess Mitch and Alex want to take this topic.
Yeah, Mitch, I wanted to talk a little bit about the priorities of the EAC moving forward, and I also put together, as promised, a list of what you had all discussed at the last meeting, which is sort of various priorities, and I broke them into categories. So land use development regulations, infrastructure, pollution, sustainable practices, energy, and conservation, ecosystem management. And this is intended to just be a continued discussion. You know, I'd probably recommend tabling this discussion so you can continue to talk about this at the next meeting. And then as you firm this up, items can be added, some can be removed. It's really up to you guys. And then it's kind of up to you guys to decide what to do with this. And I think that's kind of what Mitch, me and Mitch had talked on the phone, and you wanted to talk a little bit about the priorities of the EAC, how to use this list. And for that reason, to help with that discussion, I put together powers of council, which I put in your binder, so you can always refer to it.
Is this powers of council, is that the text from an ordinance or a resolution? It's directly from the ordinance, yes.
Yeah, exactly. And I bolded it to try to help make it a little more user friendly for you all.
So just on the list of environmental issues, is that the kind of list that the supervisors are really looking for? Because I didn't really know what.
This has not been drafted by the supervisors. This is something that Alex, right?
Yeah,
We put this together based on what conversations have
The
already
last
had here.
meeting,
Right.
but is that the kind of list, are those the issues that are really what we're supposed to be getting at? Because in powers of council, it says, keep an index of all open space environmentally sensitive areas. That's pretty broad. But some of the things we put in there, I'm just raising the question, is that what is really meant by this item 4 here?
Do you want to just read it, item 4, for the sake?
Item 4 says, keep an index of all open space and environmentally sensitive areas, publicly owned, including but not limited to flood prone areas, swamps, other natural areas for the purpose of obtaining information on the proper use of such areas.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it relates to number 1 more because it says identify environmental problems. I think we're talking about, those are 2 separate powers in your ordinance. The environmentally sensitive areas, part of that was creating this map. And I think this is a completely different subject. That's my interpretation of it, because it lists, you know, 1, 2.
You're right, it relates to number one, but.
So, I mean, I guess I'd say to your last question, identify environmental problems and recommend plans and programs to the board of supervisors for the promotion and conservation of the natural resource. So if it was this group's recommendation that an educational program was launched to address a particular issue, that could be a formal recommendation of this group.
Yeah.
Now, knowing from the other side, I'm sure the supervisors want to understand to what extent, what sort of budget might it be, so not just, you guys should do something about those
Right.
damn plastic bags that are in the pond, a little bit more detailed and specific, so, because otherwise it'll just come right back to you. To say, okay, what do you want to do?
Yeah, so it's either, specific location, or a new regulation or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, if there's an issue that's emerging that, the powers allow this group to say, we feel strongly that there is a major light pollution issue, which has been discussed, and we're seeing it, and we want it to be addressed, and we think we need to update the ordinance and do all these things, and that's the recommendation.
Yeah, okay. That's a good point.
So I guess the answer is yes, it is characterizing the environmental problems that you want to get in.
I think, being specific about why it's a problem as well.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like take one, let's just pick one, for example, just to piggyback on what Michael's saying. So let's say the EAC picks out one like,
I would say Sambo Creek right off the bat.
okay, so Sambo Creek right off the bat. And you all can consent on that as being something that you all want to put together a program on and make a recommendation that you
So on what, how clean Sambo Creek,
Well,
preserving the
cleaning it up, yeah, and how to approach residents, how to approach incrementally what progress we can establish. What issues we can prioritize to start cleanup.
that's a good example.
Yeah.
This list is for you to start this discussion.
Right.
This is a starting point. Not, you can decide as a council, maybe we want to remove 7 or 8 of these and refine it down to just a handful. That way you can propose, or you can expand it. Maybe you want more, and then as they arise, you can, it's up to you how you want to use this list. But I would just reference back to the end goal being, it sounds like the supervisors would like you to recommend a program once you've all arrived on that being a problem, expand on the scope, like,
these are not necessarily priorities, right? These are just things that have been discussed here already.
Exactly.
Yeah, I appreciate you can help us shape a specific initiative. Excellent. Thanks for that, Michael. All right.
So that's a good example of what I had brought up in terms of what are the things that we actually want to do. So first you put together a list which fits in very easily with the powers of council. And then you have to decide which one are you going to do something about. So there should be a prioritization process to do that.
Yeah.
So,
There were a couple other ones. One is to index all open space areas. We've talked about.
4 and
That's very
5.
difficult.
4 and 5 in the powers of council are more related to conservation, because it's like all there's parts of this problems list that aren't necessarily problems, but things that, in terms of like the land we talked about, but the land use.
So we want to touch back on this on a monthly basis, I would suggest. Try to narrow down if we're developing a list, or if we're developing a problems list, or just a conservation list, or not just a conservation list, but keep this as a regular topic of discussion.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Michael, I just heard out of the corner of my ear, the land we talked about. What land were you talking about?
Well, I'm just referring to
In general,
what we've been discussing at this group for a while has been all around the possibility of the township procuring different lands for conservation. And those are found in the powers of the council over 4 and 5. That's what gives that job. to
I
this
understand
group.
that. Have any lands been singled out specifically?
So most of what was done was going, this group, that's pretty much all it was doing before. That's about right. I mean, that was the main focus of this group when it existed before. And so from my understanding, the main thing we've done is to try to go through some of the old documentation that that group had gone through.
Right.
We went through the list. And that's actually the next point on the agenda is to go through a list, Mitch drafted a list of criteria of things that one might consider for such land acquisition.
Right.
So just before we get to that, to finish up on this priority issue. I'm not sure that we're gonna be moving forward fast enough to get results if we only discuss these things in this meeting. And that's why my suggestion was to establish subcommittees, like we have a subcommittee now for identifying the open space land that we want to evaluate and then possibly propose. But if we have subcommittees for some of these other items, then like if you take this list and you say, okay, let's prioritize this list. And there's an easy way to prioritize that, that is more analytical than, I would say, gut feel. The subcommittee could prioritize it, come to this, meeting and say, this is our prioritization, and these are the top 3 items. So we should now put together a program to address one of the top 3 items. And then we make a decision and send that back to the subcommittee and they work on a program to do that. And they bring it back. So the real point is just sitting in this meeting once a month is a very slow process. And I'm not sure it gets the kind of results that we're capable of getting. So that's why I suggested subcommittees.
Either subcommittees or honestly, it may come to individuals sometime. I'm really passionate about the issue of glyphosate use. I'm gonna put together some stuff. I'd like to add it to the agenda next week that we discuss this issue.
As in lawn fertilizer?
Yeah, I'm just throwing that down as an example.
Yeah.
It's an example on the list of problems. Cause every single one of these can be an entire meeting and then some, multiple.
Well, absolutely. And that's why when I sent out my note on August 20th, I said on this issue of environmental problems, if we want to move with a subcommittee or if you want to assign it to an individual, that's something I'm interested in. So I would be willing to do that.
Yep.
And
If you wanna, I'd be happy, I think that'd be great, like an individual to help whittle this down a little bit and focus on the ones.
Well, I mean, I would say, I think that issues discussed are something that are largely decided here, but individuals are gonna help to tease out each one of those issues, like a subcommittee around. If this group is like, you know what, we really want to tackle first is we want to tackle blighted properties. Well, let's get 3 people that are gonna work on. We're gonna dig into our ordinances and why they're not being enforced or what's wrong with them. Because all those things have to be done in subcommittee as well.
okay, so
You're saying you want a subcommittee to set the priorities, and I'm saying, I don't know, I don't know if you
well,
want to do that.
it can do all of that.
Yeah,
Set the priorities, bring it to this group, have it, I would say, blessed, for lack of a better word, and then move forward to develop the programs to address it.
Yeah, and to Michael's point, I think that we can streamline what specific issues we want to address rather than spread ourselves too thin. It might work better if we take on a small handful of specific items.
That's the idea of prioritizing the
right.
list.
And also you may find that you want, something comes up that is urgently needs to be addressed, and so it's gonna supersede some of those priorities because there's a time frame associated with it.
Brett, you brought up a good, the unlocked sewage issue, educating the public, that could be a program.
Yeah,
And that is something that a lot of the residents here in the township have on their property, and it's sewage has been a subject that has come up many, many a time here in Smithfield Township over the last 6 months or so, so. And we also had our SEO here at the meeting, and so, you know, that's a good example of if you all, but it would, I think I agree with, just to change subjects now, I agree with Mitch that it would probably be good to have a subcommittee try to talk about this list outside of these meetings and come back, and that might be a good way. And if you want to volunteer, we can get together.
I'll take this item right here. I'm happy to do that. And I'll get it prioritized and that's not individual. I won't do it just on my own opinion, but I'll get it prioritized.
As long as you're
And
not
then
a
we-
quorum of members of here that you can go and talk.
Mhm.
It just can't be a quorum. So you can meet with a bunch of other environmental EAC members as long as it's not a quorum of them. Of us.
Yeah, and maybe, you know, maybe James.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's how many of us? 7?
Seven.
So quorum is 4, yeah.
And maybe, you know, James had indicated, you know, PFAS and glyphosate in the past is concerns with regards to drinking water, and, you know. These are all, and then, you know, there's blighted properties, there's, you know, overdevelopment. There's,
Well, you might want a subcommittee that's on community education. And then, so as opposed to being specific to, we want a committee on glyphosate. Which you could, because there could be things in the ordinance that prevent that. But you also might want to generally have a group that focus on getting on an educational program, which is actually sort of want to promote a community environmental program.
So let me just take this as a list, as an action item from this meeting and I'll start working on that.
okay.
with a focus on environmental programs. I think that makes sense to me. It seems like the town.
Well, you wanted to put, I think you want to prioritize this, so you said you're gonna try to do.
Well, there's a stepwise process. First of all, prioritize it
Mhm.
with input from everyone here,
Hmm.
and I can do that. Because we have the ability to reach out to everybody. I'd still like to get people's phone numbers, but to be able to call you, but
Well, let's try to make that happen after this meeting. Let's try to
Okay.
exchange numbers so that Mitch has all of your contacts, and we really appreciate your willingness to undertake this, and I'm here to help from an administrative support standpoint. So if you need to use the facilities or anything like that to meet, I'm here to help.
All right.
So then one of the things that we had talked about specific to environmental problems was using the environmental problem form and having that available to hand out at the Halloween trunk.
Mhm.
Is that something we're gonna do?
Whose trunk are we using?
I have a trunk.
Got a trunk?
I've got it.
Do you have the?
Eric's got pumpkins?
For you, I got a trunk.
Got a trunk, Eric's got no dead bodies.
Eric's got,
You gotta find that, but.
you got a flatbed. That's even
It's
better.
not gonna be here.
Okay.
I can
Are you
leave it
gonna
here, I'm not taking it. So I can pull my truck in, set up all the pumpkins and then
Oh, yeah, no problem.
get it later.
All right.
Thought that would be.
Pumpkins. Okay. All right, so I got a trunk. Eric's got a trunk. for
We're
pumpkins.
out of town that day.
Oh, is this Thanksgiving?
No, 26th of
No,
October.
Isn't that the Long Island Memorial?
Long Island Memorial. Oh, yeah, sorry, I got a death in the family. But Pat will be here.
All right.
Is there anyone who can join Pat if Brett's unavailable?
Thank you, Gene.
I'm away, I'm sorry.
I'm at a conference that day. Sorry, I thought I was gonna be here.
Mitch,
Pat,
you around?
Well, if I can walk on the 26th, I'm around,
Okay.
All right,
okay?
otherwise we'll bring you into bed.
Well, I have my wife bring me in my wheelchair.
Are we getting any motions on anything here?
That's a good question. I would just recommend tabling it. I don't know if you need a formal motion, but go.
Well, I have a motion to table this paragraph.
That's the motion. in a second.
Second, and agreement? I in favor. Alright,
Aye.
okay. Next is the,
Mitch, yeah, Mitch and James.
James, this is the.
Okay, so this.
I don't know, I warmed up on this, but,
Came up at the last meeting.
I didn't volunteer.
And we have this list of properties, right?
Mhm.
How many properties are on that list?
There's a couple of dozen.
Yeah. 2030.
And, what I had suggested is that we prioritize which properties we really want to look at. So one of the things that,
I'd like to jump in.
I thought that the goal was to create a list, a priority list, not for those properties, because those properties were already vetted by the previous
Mhm.
council. The purpose of this is if it so happens that someone's like, hey, there's this new property that might be for sale that somebody wants, that one would go through this checklist to make sure it meets certain criteria, that the township would even decide to move forward with adding it to the list of potential properties. Is that right?
that was the subject that you brought up. Okay, I'm still back on, we have a list of 24 properties. Where do we spend our effort? And I don't know which of those properties have the highest desirability and probability of success. And so I come back to what I started with the last time. I understand your view is different, Michael. How do we decide which 2 or 3 properties we're really gonna focus our effort on?
But you're not gonna focus on 2 or 3 properties, because 99% of them, the owner's never gonna sell it to you. So you don't have to go through this process. That's what I'm trying to say. You need to find out who owns them. If they're on the market, or if they're not on the market, there's no desire to sell them. And then ideally, we find someone that knows the owner that can have a nice conversation with them. There's not that many properties to do. That's my view on this. I don't think you have to say, we're gonna focus on these 3, because then you're gonna realize,
There was a
Yeah,
lot of
I have a
properties.
very different view, with all due respect.
then you should talk to someone that does this for a living, because I have done that and had those conversations, and they don't agree with you.
Michael has a good point. That list has been vetted by professionals for years.
This job of identifying land for preservation is very opportunistic. It has to be, because you're basically trying to buy land at a rate that is what the assessor has given it, and usually something that can be purchased for a lot more money. So there's a benevolence that occurs with these acquisitions.
Okay, so what you're saying, I think, is that all of the properties that are on the list that we have right now meet the requirements of the draft Smithfield Township Conservation Selection Guidelines.
My understanding is that that list, for one reason or another, made it to that list by the previous council. I mean, if you wanna go through, like, well, really, this one shouldn't be there, we can remove some. I mean, I suspect it'll be really hard for any of them, because it's an old list too.
Yeah.
And again, I agree on this, I don't actually agree on necessarily on your criteria. But I agree there should be a process by which you have a criteria to add new properties if they should come up.
Okay, so let's just move on to that for the time being.
Yeah.
Part of that came from this draft, and I'm not sure exactly how I got a copy of it, but it was in the paperwork that was in my EAC file. So you guys probably know where that came from, right?
Yeah, that was the last.
Okay, so they have certain things in here that they say, which was the basis for putting together the list of items that you all have here and what was handed out of what criteria do you consider when you want to say, should this property even be thought about for open space?
Does it make sense to have you move forward with building the priority list before we move on to the property list?
Sure.
Okay, why don't we do that?
Sure.
So I mean,
We'll have some order here.
I had sent out a list of priorities, and Michael asked at the last meeting to just simplify it into a few, and I selected 10 criteria. And I don't even know if I selected the right criteria in terms, the first one was size.
So that's,
The second one was value. The third was location. The fourth was accessibility. In other
Yeah.
words, is it easy to get to? Are there unique characteristics? What is the perceived value to the township? Is it excellent? Is it just okay? Does it protect water quality, which was one of the key things from the 319 draft? Does it have potential uses? So that people who visit this open space area can hike, picnic, there'd be a whole list of things. Ownership, does it have multiple owners or is it a single owner? And and this gets to your point, Michael, which you say is the most important thing. Is the owner willing to work with the township, sell it, donate value, that sort of thing? And then what is the acquisition cost? Is the acquisition cost, above market value, at market value, or below market value? So that's
appraiser.
10 criteria that each
But
property
the
could be
value is up
rated.
to an appraiser.
Yeah, and the number 10, you're not gonna be able to do until you've already decided, do you wanna sort of look at a property in detail and invest in resources?
Yeah,
You're not gonna do that with every property that someone says, hey, we might wanna get that one. I'm not gonna go and get appraisals for everything.
right.
You can look on your program, whatever that is, and see what it was last sold for. That might give you some
That's what
indication
you
of it,
got.
but it doesn't necessarily give you the appraised value.
I had a question about,
Sure.
you had a points system developed for this?
Well, if I was gonna prioritize, yes, I would
Okay.
use a point system.
Okay.
Because you've got 10 properties and you say, which is the one?
I think everybody's getting ahead of themselves here. Because to your point, Michael, I mean, first you have to find the properties. Okay, you have to identify them on the map. And there are numerous properties in the
Right.
township.
We have 24 already identified.
Yeah, and those were already, I already sent Alex all that information on all those properties.
Mhm.
But Michael's talking, that was in the past, he's talking about the future.
Right.
And the future is, you have to go in, you have to look at all these properties on a map, and there, on a map, it may look this small, but there's tons of properties, open spaces in the township. A lot of properties, and that requires a lot of, research. A lot of research, because you're talking, you have to look on the map, then you have to go into each individual property, and you have to find out who owns it, how big it is,
Right.
okay, and I don't wanna bore anybody here, but it's a lot of work.
Am I hearing that this is an impractical?
It's not impractical, it's very tedious and it takes a lot of work. Okay,
issue?
and it, to identify, I don't know how they did it in the past, but from what I've done, you have to go into a map and you have to look at all the properties on the map. And you can see that they are huge, some of them are huge. And, you first determine what you want to do with them first, right? Do you want to preserve the property for future park? You want to add the property to an existing park? You want to use the property to enhance the township in some way? Or you want to create some buffer to attract tourists?
Well, a lot of it is, usually this is around preservation, it's land that is vital to.
Correct.
Streams and rivers, river quality, my assumption is that was what this group would focus on.
Okay.
Which is, I don't have any problem with your list here, I think the numbers might need to be updated, for instance, protects water quality, doesn't meet criteria, meets criteria. maybe that one's worth more than 1 or 2 points, is worth 5.
One thing you can do with this is you can put weighting factors.
Correct.
On each of these 10. So you could say, that's really important, we're gonna give it a factor of 3, a multiplier.
But you have to decide how big a property you want to
So
look for.
I just wanna say, this, for me, this is, it's very ambitious, and it's very ambitious to do it, perfect. I do think it's very important, because it's important for the 3 supervisors to hear formal recommendations on whether or not it makes sense for the township to have some sort of interest from an environmental perspective, from a recreation perspective, whatever it is, in certain properties. Because what you don't want is for the board of supervisors to say like, hey, this one's for sale, let's go buy that, hey, without any sort of strategy. It's this group that has to provide that guidance and strategy, and allows the supervisors, the 3 supervisors, to be somewhat accountable, as opposed to be like, oh, looks great, we should pick that up. And this group can be like, well, it doesn't meet any of the criteria that we've laid out, any of the focus that we've talked about, so it really doesn't make sense. We do not recommend the
But what is the,
supervisors
what
procuring this.
if the supervisor is pursuing?
Right now, we're pursuing anything technically.
Okay, but you're looking for something in case in the future you allocate or you have money to do it with.
I don't know if that, that's not necessarily my priority. It falls on a little bit under Alex's jurisdiction as it relates to parks, and, there has been in the past purchases of land and acquisition. I personally believe we need to make sure we do a good job of the parks and land that we own already as in the township, and maintain them, and if it's being purchased for preservation only and not as a recreation use, that might be a little bit different. But I do think it's important to have a process, at least by which there can be recommendations made, because it could be that in 2 months, all of a sudden, it comes on your desk that Alex says, the supervisors are considering purchasing this wetland. It'd be nice if this group had a way to be like, we're gonna go through this criteria, no, we don't think you should buy it, yes, we think you should buy it. The supervisors would like to see some sort of reason, not just gut feeling of this group on its recommendations.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
That's what this.
I agree.
That's what this system would do, because first of all, those are just my thoughts as far as what the criteria would be. This group really has to decide what the criteria is, and then rank the properties accordingly. It's a lot of work. You're absolutely right, James. It's a lot of work for any property.
Why don't we look for properties that, as you mentioned, look something that's close to water, wetlands, and let's concentrate on those first.
But I do think what Mitch is doing in terms of coming up with a criteria.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
Well, let's just
I'm all
weigh
in
it
favor.
more towards the protection, which you have, so we maybe need to figure out how to weight this.
Okay,
Well, this was just a suggestion
okay.
for the committee. The committee that is dealing with this really needs to decide how they want to handle it. You couldn't handle it just by gut feel.
No, we can't do that.
No.
That work.
This is a very analytical approach, which would actually rank properties. You
Right,
can list
right.
them from the most
I agree with
desirable
you. I
to the
agree with
least
you.
desirable.
I agree. We should have a pathway to
Right.
get from point C and B to A.
All right, I'd like to make a suggestion so we can move on from this.
There we go. Great.
Can you do your incremental work, whatever portion of it you think you might be able to manage in honing down a prioritization list, and bring it back to us so we can work together to help really focus the prioritization list.
On this list.
Yeah.
Well, the way I would want to do that is I would want to meet with the committee and spend a couple hours on it. And I can guide the committee through that process easily. That's not.
Can I recommend maybe think about the categories of recreation and then protection and preservation? It's a good suggestion.
Okay,
As opposed to adding them all up together, because some of them, has the ability to, potential uses hiking, et cetera, you're getting more points. Then another one is, can be used for preservation. So those would sort of cancel each other out in either of the most ideal pieces of land.
Can I make a motion that we should prioritize as Michael just suggested?
Yes, I agree. Can you
And then
work
come back to the group with.
those two elements, right?
Take this list
Conservation.
and put it into two. Evaluating land for preservation and protection, and evaluating land for
Recreation.
potential recreation.
And bring it back next month. Would that work for you?
This is a job for the committee,
Which committee?
the Committee on Open Space,
Who's
which was
that?
established 2 meetings ago, I believe.
My sense is that by.
This is just a suggestion from my
Right,
point of view, because I tend to be more analytical.
my sense is that you make a good member of that committee since you put this list together, and that's, I think.
You just volunteered yourself in the committee.
Yeah.
Who's on the committee?
We have, Mitch, myself, and Ken, and maybe, you could be a invited member for this.
Mitch, it's already Mitch.
Mitch, Ken, and Brad.
Well, now
Myself.
he's putting me on.
So this could be a one-time invite, you provided
Sure.
this, and then
There we go. Good discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
we can take a look at.
No chairman of the
We
committee.
can take a look at the properties that have already been, and then we can kind of break it down and see, which ones are more recreation potentially, which ones are more purely preservation. And then, the other factor, I guess we're in the discussion part of the motion. Did someone second the motion? I think there was a second, right?
I'll second.
Okay, Michael seconded. The motion was made by James, seconded by Michael. And then my discussion would be, just remember that the supervisors, when if they come to a position where they want to potentially look at property, they, certain properties are more eligible for DCNR funding. And that can be a one-to-one match. So let's say, but they have certain criteria that they will rank projects for. So if it's, less than 20 acres, no water features, less likely. If it's a property that's 100 acres, there's a stream and a lake running through it, the township can then apply for DCNR grant to put trails in and kiosks and things like that. Not necessarily a soccer field, but just some infrastructure to allow people to, like Mount Nebo Park, you have that trail and the signs, things like that. So grant funding is really important because that allows the tax dollars to be leveraged sometimes rather significantly. So when the subcommittee meets, we should probably, I can look into the DCNR criteria, but that's the very minimum that you're gonna wanna make sure it checks all those
and that's
boxes.
great, yeah.
Okay.
Because that really gets, I think that's self-explanatory.
And we spoke, the planning commission made a suggestion, cause Brett brought it up, about, walking paths, bicycle paths
Mhm.
as part of our agenda.
That is a really good topic. It's, I think, a completely separate discussion, to be honest, because we're talking, that's my opinion is that we're talking. about
I
potential
just wanted to
acquisitions.
make sure.
It is
that-
a really important
I
subject.
wanted to make sure that maybe you can make a note so that we can,
Mhm.
we can bring this up or.
Yeah, is it on the agenda for?
No, that subject's not on the agenda, but it's a good subject, the greenways, which is a different type of, it would be almost, I don't wanna get too. We can maybe put that on next month's agenda to talk about.
Yeah,
that, probably.
can we do that?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay.
And Mitch, when you have an idea, then I can go and look on an individual basis, then
Okay.
I can work on, I don't mind doing that, I'll just take spare time. And I can look at the maps and see exactly where these properties would be beneficial.
Yeah, and you'll have your priorities list and you'll be able to.
Yeah, it'd be easier to look,
Okay.
for a property that way.
Okay.
Is there a size criteria?
Exactly, that's,
Property?
There's generally recognized a minimum size that makes it worth the effort to even consider for
Is
acquisition.
that like 10
The
acres?
bare minimum is like, as I understand, is 10, but you probably wanna go bigger than that.
20.
Marshall's Falls, for example, is 15 acres, and that's considered to be a small
How
acquisition,
about
but it was a
Mount Nebo
waterfall.
Park, how big is that?
Mount Nebo is a couple dozen acres,
Mount Nebo Park,
right?
Okay,
186.
can we
Right,
go
so it's
forward?
more than a couple dozen, it
Yeah,
says.
sorry.
So that's.
Yeah.
185 acres.
Mount Nebo Park is a good example of a property that would be desirable because it has water features. It's large, you know, there's potential improvements for trails and, you know.
I
Yes.
spoke to one of the people on the list.
Hold on a second.
Oh,
Hold on a second. I wanna move forward with this. I wanna table, I wanna resolve what we're gonna do and take it. Move on to the next thing. I also want to include Pat on some of this. She has definite opinions about how she wants to organize the EAC in terms of subcommittees and such. I need to bring her into the loop of this. So what need we do right now? We're gonna break this down into two sections, conservation and parks.
Preservation and
Preservation and recreation.
Recreation, thank you. So we can start with that and begin with those two elements. Start or organize the priorities list to fit in with those two criteria, large, like super criteria. And we can meet as a subcommittee at some point in the next month.
Mhm.
Three of us,
Yeah.
four of us. And you were in this because you asked for it. You asked for it. Okay,
so you can vote on the motion,
let's vote. Can we get a vote on the motion?
What's the motion, sir?
Is to,
is to do that.
is to categorize,
For the subcommittee to categorize this prioritization into two different categories.
yes.
Correct.
Okay,
recreation and preservation.
so moved.
All right,
I need someone a second.
Just ask
Second.
a silly question.
hold on a second, hold on a second,
Oh,
hold on a
sorry.
second. We need to finish our motion here.
Okay.
All right,
I motioned. Somebody's a second and then we can have discussion.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, now we can have discussion.
Should we vote?
No, you discuss now.
Oh, okay,
So
discussion.
now is when you get input.
Thank you.
This is silly, so forgive me. Is there ever like a priority on acquiring a piece of property, which has future possibilities to enhance the town as a whole, you know, a center of the town? So, you know, in time, 10 years from now, you know, that we look like a town.
That's a really good
Yeah, I
point.
don't know what category that.
So I think typically
falls in.
typically a township would purchase something either to be a park or to be not ever developed. So the idea behind a lot of land trust acquisition is that you want to protect it from future development. So as an example that, you know, you might be able to say, well, this land here cannot be, presently can't really be developed because the current ordinance says there's this setback, et cetera, et cetera. And so the owner of that land is like, you know what, it's not really worth anything. I can't do anything with it. I want to give it over. And you might say, well, it's not really that valuable because it's never going to be developed anyway. But in perpetuity, it could be that township supervisors down the road change those ordinances and make it so you can develop it. So the way to protect it is to purchase it, either by, and it doesn't have to be owned by the township, it could be owned by the township, it could be owned by a land trust. That effectively protects it. I don't know if you wanted to develop a town sort of center, typically, private owner would have to be the one that builds those buildings, right? The township's not gonna do that.
I think
Is that what you,
I think that's a good point. I think this may not be the forum. Maybe
Okay.
the zoning commission or the planning commission.
planning commission's more around.
Right, planning commission, so perhaps, that's a good point, maybe take it to the planning commission and get a, you know, comment to them, ask them if they'd be willing to develop that concept. But we're not in, I don't think that's our business right here. It's a good idea though.
Okay,
All right.
no, I mean, it just came up.
Yeah, it's not, we would chime in after the fact, once the planning commission had the.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, to achieve that, it would be you would put the zoning in place that would allow for that to
Right.
occur. That's the idea
Thank
behind
you,
planning.
thank you. Any other comments? Thank you, all right,
So now we have to vote.
can we vote on the agenda?
Vote on the motion. All
Thank
in
you.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you. All right. We are at, I guess, E.
Can I continue with my, It takes a minute there, Brian. I just made contact with one of the people that was on the list. Okay, but I mentioned, I spoke to him because he has a couple of properties in my development, but the larger properties, I asked him, or I sent him the text, and he never answered back, so.
Are you finished?
I took that as a no. Thank you so much, Fred.
Move on now.
Well, let's move on.
All right, on a discussion point here on Sambo Creek watershed pollution reduction. This harkens back to the point I made about community outreach for sewage mounds. I think there's different manner of pollution to Sambo Creek, which we have been charged with helping resolve the pollution in Sambo Creek or something, if I'm not mistaken. The committee itself was.
Mitigated, yeah.
Yeah, mitigating it, thank you. And I've toured the area a couple times, thanks to our friends. And, this is something that I'd like to have keep it on the old business thing so we can keep up with it. And move incrementally towards educating the public about how to lower the pollution that is obvious up there.
How do we determine that?
Well, that's gonna be an issue, how we determine it, but I think initially we can educate the public. And the commercial landowners up there. What the potential contamination is coming from their lots, and there's known issues and there's yet to be discovered issues. But it's gonna be a long slog out fight to get people to conform to the pollution standards. But it's something I think we need to chip away at.
Is there a way to test,
Yeah,
Alex?
yeah.
To test to see if his lots are contributing to the pollution?
Well, yes, I would just say that when you say Sambo Creek, you're talking about a very large drainage area, right? You're talking about this whole entire portion. You're talking about this whole entire part of your township, which is the whole Sambo Creek drainage area.
And Sambo Creek itself, which is polluted.
The Sambo Creek itself is impaired.
It's impaired, right?
The macro invertebrate index is not great, to put it lightly, compared to where it should be, which is the macro that we talked about in the first couple of meetings this year. It's, the pollution intolerant macroinvertebrates are not tolerating Sambo Creek. It's water quality. And there's a number of reasons. The document that I gave you is what the township is actually charged with as part of its MS4 permit is the sediment reduction plan. And we are tasked with, it says the amount of sediment loading reduction required within the Sambo Creek PRP planning area is 75,428 pounds per year. And I actually went out with the township engineer to investigate a potential site. We didn't identify at that day, we didn't identify any sections of the creek where it was clearly eroding. We intend to go back once the leaves are off the trees, maybe next month, to see if we can maybe identify something. But the township is charged with that, and one potential way the township could do that is they would identify a portion of the main stem of the Sambo, or the section within that drainage area, which is clearly causing sediment pollution during runoff events, or maybe it's right on the main stem itself. And then the township could have conversations with the landowner to see if they'd be willing to allow the township to apply for a grant to stabilize the stream bank. And then the township would get the landowner permission, and then they would apply for a grant to stabilize the stream bank. And then the engineers can calculate by doing that, how many pounds of sediment per year would that reduce?
Most of this you're talking about is planting trees.
And also riprap, like just putting big boulders along the actual stream bank itself to remove the raw.
Make sure we're all on the same page. We're not talking about necessarily pollution as I would sort of think of it, but we're talking about sediment caused by erosion of the stream area and by sediment coming in, into the stream, correct?
Yeah.
Because I'm reading from this that best management practices are stream restoration, forest buffer, stream restoration and forest buffer, stream restoration, forest buffer and infiltration, and basin retrofitting. I will say, none of that is education. So you talked about, we need to do education, but I'm just saying, I mean, I'm not saying there's something wrong with education, but if the solution to a problem involves actually going out and doing something very specific about planting trees and putting in boulders, that's not the same as running an education campaign on keeping Sample Creek clean.
Right.
Because that's not a problem. If it's not a problem, it doesn't sound like it is.
I don't think it's as clear cut
It's
as.
not clear because that.
It is, sediment is the problem. Sediment is the identified problem, and I
Where
recommend,
did this stuff?
this is the DEP telling us that that's the problem,
Right.
right? So we are obligated to make
We
sure that we focus on this
promoting
problem.
and building a forest buffer along the Sandhill Creek.
Well, no, we're not. What I've seen is,
Why not?
The buffers can be incorporated as, as some of those properties, that property we looked at as, they can be eased, they can be provided to the township as an easement. And by having a forest buffer, they can calculate how much of sediment that'll reduce, right? And it says here that one of the options, we only have to take, as I understand, long story short is, the
35 feet.
options that Michael just read out are what we have in place, and I recommend, kind of focusing on those, or if you identify a specific, like, let's say there is an on-lot sewage mound that is clearly leaking and flowing,
Right,
that's a point source that needs to be.
how do we
identified.
determine that?
Well,
How do you know?
there are other issues as well. Water is considered the enemy by residents, up on Sambo and a lot of that area up there. And because they have no stormwater, no stormwater runoff, so individual landowners are creating their own drainage ditches straight into a tributary to Sambo. And this is stuff which I mean about education. We need to let the public know that they can't build drainage ditches, runoff ditches, and just dump their water on their property. They can't just start building their own irrigation or whatever. And they have to maintain their mounds. So education is just the tip of the spear in order to soften the community up to understand that they really need to take care of what's going on.
so you've given me a more clear indication of what you've identified. So you're identifying individuals who are digging their own makeshift culverts or
Yeah.
swales
Mhm.
where they and channeling them into something. So that could be an educational component that goes with the I can see those as two different educational programs. One, educating landowners on how to properly do a swale, like do a French
Isn't that part
drain
of the
or
ordinance?
a rain garden or something like that.
And the township is, they have their own issues about allowing people to do that, giving people permits to build runoff, which is
But isn't that part of chapter 26?
yeah.
I have to
Anyway,
look into
I don't want to get off on a sidetrack, but we can raise awareness about the environmental issues in preparation for coming with any analysis or on-site and, pollution components from a mound or whatever. Just bring the issue up, make the public aware, and then come in with the enforcement folks.
Yeah, I like the way you're thinking, and it's good to know what, so I also drove up there. And I did notice that I think sediment is indeed one of the major pollutants in that watershed, and it makes sense for us to focus on that, and let's, for the sake of everyone's time, maybe we'll just table this and talk about this again at the next meeting, and I can give you an update, and I'm also working on some other things
Okay,
too, and so we can keep this discussion going. I think it's a really important discussion.
motion to table.
Now I have a question.
Okay,
Where did this come from?
This is from the MS4 permit. This is the townships from the DEP, the pollution.
This is from the MS4.
This is what the township is tasked with.
okay. Anybody else want comments?
I was just gonna say, I definitely think we should, if we can focus on the MS4 and the things that we're required to do first.
Yep.
That makes the most sense. And then, add on if there's, education pieces that support this. I mean, I would say education seems like it maybe should be, don't cut down your trees near the river. That's number one.
Right.
Right? So if you want to do an education piece on that and keeping Example Creek, because that's what, when I'm reading this as from the DEP is the
Yeah,
primary reason, then that part makes sense.
Can that be
to me.
handled by an ordinance when you say don't cut down trees? Don't cut down the trees?
Well, there is clear cutting ordinances already, right?
I'm not sure, I know our,
Clear cutting ordinance is a thing. Some townships have clear cutting ordinances where the individual property or
Okay.
cannot clear more than like, let's say 60% of their lot or
Right.
something like that.
Okay,
But there's only so far that township can actually go.
yeah. So again, back to the education, how to be a responsible citizen in this area. Don't cut your trees down, don't dump water and don't make a ditch to the creek, maintain your mound. This can all be in a package that we can outreach with.
Brett, do you want to be the chair of the environmental education committee subcommittee?
Well, I think.
There's no chair, sorry.
No
Don't be a
chair.
problem. No, I mean, you brought up education a bunch. It's one of the tasks of this group. I think it would make sense.
That's part of an environmental program.
Right.
Yeah,
I think it makes sense. There's good, it doesn't have to be preparing a giant document that goes out. It can be something, content for the social media page that can go out on a regular basis.
I'd be happy to do
If
that.
that's something you and someone else maybe wanna take on,
Yeah.
as long as it's based on,
Your basic,
actual recommendations that we should be doing.
yeah, well, it's based on what I'm hearing and what you're reading us, that it, our mandate, the township's mandate. I'd be happy to do that.
Then maybe they can be, your thoughts on specific messages can be brought to this group, and then this group can vote it to the supervisors, or just give it to Alex, and Alex can say, dude, put this up, and you'll be
Okay,
done.
good idea. Thank you, Mike. All right. So is,
Motion to table.
motion to table,
I motion to table.
second
Any-
vote?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, 637 Bridges Road. This is the proposal from this potential developer is a mess. In my eyes, he's asking for way too much. The property is distressed in terms of development to begin with. And the list of waivers and variances is,
First of all, this is just a sketch plan that was sent in, this is
I
not a full
understand.
plan.
I
That
understand.
means they're just seeking input, which is great that you were reviewing it,
Yeah.
because they're gonna look for that input.
Right.
Yeah.
It's, where's my, I printed out the, here we go. They're trying to horseshoe a whole lot of stuff, very difficult piece of property to develop. And, Gappy Drive is pointed out in the comprehensive plan as one of the prime beauty areas of our township. And this is just not the way to treat a beauty area, in my opinion. Jeannie and I, thanks to Jeannie, we're gonna go up and talk to the DEP in Wilkes-Barre, and find out if their permit is valid. They're basing a lot of their arguments for development on 2008 zoning variances and, well.
Brett, I'm just gonna interject and I'll let you continue, but you can save yourself a trip to Wilkes-Barre because the stormwater permits are handled by the Conservation District in Monroe County. So I would call the Monroe County Conservation District and talk to their technical team. Wilkes-Barre also has them, but chapter 102 permits, are you talking about stormwater? I would start.
A lot of things.
I would start with the Conservation District
Okay,
and then I'll let you continue that.
well, it's a matter of validity of a permit. How long, I mean, they're basing their request for variances and waivers on 2008 standards. And/or how long can can you carry a permit over a law change? Is it still valid after the law?
He's talking about two different law changes, so you're talking,
Right.
there's,
So this is why I'm saying this, because we're not sure. We found a point person who can lead us through the legalities of that particular, of that issue.
What's the acreage?
It's 7, I think.
7 acres.
I think so, give or take.
I mean, this is the land that we talked about when we were talking about Buttermilk Falls.
No, well, it's Buttermilk Falls is on it, they're talking about the.
It includes,
They're
this
talking
land does
about-
include Buttermilk Falls.
It does. And
So,
there's,
I mean,
it's across the
when we
road.
talked about Buttermilk Falls, that's one of those areas which would be, to your point, beautifying an area, making it part of the township
Right,
that would be very, very special.
Yep.
And the idea of procuring that area is very attractive, except that there are multiple owners involved,
yeah, like 4,
which makes it more difficult,
it's ridiculous,
right?
yeah. And we're not even talking about that piece of property, we're talking about the property across the street.
Well, but that, we talked about that as being part of that whole, if you tried to do something from a township point of view around Buttermilk Falls, then you could include this area in it. So, I mean, you can solve your problem easily just by this property.
No, not quite that simple.
Can't afford, we can't afford the $2 million it would cost to do
And there's
this
some,
work.
there was some vague notion by the council who presented to the 2 different groups here that there's some, Buttermilk Falls could be in play, but he wouldn't define it. He said, well, we can blah, blah, and that's as far as we got. So there's something else.
Well, I think I asked that question, namely, they're trying to say. I mean, it's understandable, they're trying to say they wouldn't be able to develop any of Buttermilk Falls. It's part of the land, there's certain requirements in the ordinances that require certain setbacks. There are things that can be varied, so there are things that can have waivers, so they're not as strict as would have to go to the zoning hearing board. Let me just finish. He basically alluded to the fact that by not having 100 foot here, they could, potentially deed away the waterfalls. I personally don't think there's any real risk of anyone ever doing anything with the waterfall, because that would be very difficult and, I mean, impossible right now. I think probably impossible ever.
And they want to impact Candle Creek, they don't want sidewalks, they want, it's just a mess. There's a lot, I mean, the list of variances is such as it is, it's like 30 some variances and waivers.
There's only a couple, there's only 3 variances.
3 variances and 25 waivers. And it adds up to they're shoehorning a lot of stuff into a very complicated space, and it's just, anyway. So I want to find out if their permit is legal. And I appreciate your direction there. So this is gonna, I don't know if they're gonna come back with a more clear development plan or not. Maybe they'll just back away and go away, hopefully. And I'm gonna bring this up to the landowners across the street. There's 4 or 5 houses there. And their property values are gonna go down, their quality of life is gonna go down. And again, it's just, anyway. So this is something I want to readdress as time goes forward. We're keeping an eye on what they might propose. But I think it's a very distressful application.
Just to be clear, this is not really an application, this is, so they're gonna put in every possible waiver that they might ask for. I mean, that's exactly what the purpose of these things is.
Right.
Like, how open would you be for us? Because sometimes it's things like, I made this very clear, I hate parking lots and I don't like minimum parking requirements. And interestingly, he said, yeah, but we actually think we need that many parking spaces. But I'm always open to being to waive a parking requirement. That's me, that's how I feel about it. I hate seeing giant Walmart parking lots that go on empty, lots of concrete that isn't being used by anyone, but it's because the zoning required it to be that way.
Mhm.
On the other hand, I also told him, I really like sidewalks. So I see that you don't wanna have a sidewalk, but I'm gonna probably be a stickler for a sidewalk. I mean, that's what I said to him. There's some other things that I personally think I don't have as big of an issue with. I also am pretty concerned with Gaffney Drive. It is a very dangerous intersection, as you know, as we all know. I get concerned about it all the time, and the idea that there might be something, again, not necessarily exactly this, because I don't think this exactly as proposed really solves the problem. But closing down Gaffney Drive, making it possible that it would help alleviate some of those issues. I wanna see a traffic study, I want to see all this stuff. But I like the idea that someone might be able to help make it safer.
These people are not gonna do that. They don't care about Gaffney. They don't care about.
There's a road down in Lehigh Valley, crosses the railroad station. Railroad tracks, and there's two lights. I don't think this. Between the lights is 100 feet.
Right.
And
There will never be a light at Gaffney Drive, it's too close, there won't be, PennDOT would never allow.
they allowed it down in,
Yeah, and they allow it in Marshall's Creek. There's a light.
The lights we have right now are already causing traffic problems.
Yeah, well, this,
I mean. the
everybody
whole
wants to
thing
get
there.
through Smithfield Township to get up to Middle Smithfield, so they just wanna clear access. And then who is it saying there's gonna be a 4-lane, 2 lanes, gonna be a 4-lane? Our not super, Scott Morris says that there's a plan in place, that they're enlarged to 09, so it's just not, this is not a well thought through thing. And as I say, anyway, so it's gonna be an ongoing thing, I just like to table it. And, or should, if we can put this on the agenda as a touch point going forward. This,
Do you wanna wait until they submit the land development plan?
yeah. that
If they do, they might not.
that should come up on, next time it comes up on the planning commission. you should
do that. I'll be there, I go to all the meetings.
So I'll keep an eye on the planning commission agenda, as once that gets submitted, then maybe that'd be
All right,
a recurring agenda item for you to continue to discuss. As
Yeah.
Michael said, this is merely, this is at this point is,
Planning stage.
it's not even, it's before
I agree.
planning, it's more nearly the beginning. I mean,
I agree,
It's
so
a
let's not
sketch.
worry about it until they
Yeah.
come back, but we need to be
What
prepared.
they really wanna know is, are there things in here that make, that township is adamant that no way, you're never gonna do like that? And then they go back and they cost it out, and they're like, can we do this and make any money or not?
Right,
If they say, no, we can't, then they're not gonna pursue.
they said the deal breaker would be the sidewalks and the creek. Setback.
No, I think they said it might be a deal breaker, so.
Yeah, we gotta preserve the,
Just those 2 points.
and we gotta have the sidewalks so like.
Yeah, if they want 50 feet from the creek, they don't want sidewalks, right there, it blows it out of the water. We need sidewalks there, because if people wanna access Buttermilk Falls.
You have to allow people to walk on their, on,
Absolutely,
okay.
so, good point, let's table it. Or put it off until we know, until they come back with something
Quick question.
substantial.
What is it? What's it?
They don't know.
It's just a night, just right now,
Yeah.
it's just, well, no, I have it, but,
Okay.
No, it's just empty retail.
yeah.
Sure,
I thought they said retail and office.
Yeah,
Yeah,
originally.
and we could
They only
put,
made it one floor.
and it's only 1 floor. A past one was 2 floors, that would have required more, parking space. You know, one thing that I had asked was, oh, can you actually get rid of Gaffney Drive entirely? That way you could move everything over, and that way you wouldn't have to have a smaller setback against the river. But I didn't realize there's driveways there, so that's not possible, right?
It sounds like another strip mall.
exactly.
They use the words, strip mall. You know, I mean,
Yeah, they did.
they did. Strip mall.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Not, not very nice.
The challenge is the safety question. How can you address the safety?
Question,
Was it the planning commission that they presented their plans or?
planning commission also,
I suggested that since it was originally gonna be a 2-story building, they cut it in half. I suggested, why don't they shrink the footprint, use the smaller square footage and make that 2 stories? And the developer,
It's twice as much money.
Well, no, but he said that two floor retail
Oh, yeah.
doesn't work well, but they were willing to do that in the beginning, so I don't know why it would be different. So-
Because they were thinking of the second floor as office.
Right.
The first floor would be retail,
Their smoke shop and their
nail
CD.
parlor,
It's all complicated.
vape store.
yeah.
So I'm just throwing that out there, if that's something that you might wanna recommend to make it fit better.
Yeah, they had all kind of calculations.
Yeah.
For this and that. Anyway, so without taking up any more time, let's just see what they come back with. But I do want to make the community aware that the 5 houses there, that there's rumblings. It's really concerning rumblings, sorry.
Michael, why do you say that the township can't even consider this property?
Too much money.
And I don't know what it would be used for, a welcome center, a community center.
Because it's probably about $2 million, maybe $1.5 million to. PennDOT will never allow a driveway there. That's why they have this. It basically has to be a road. You have to have an intersection. I mean, it's gonna be a driveway, but you have to build out the intersection spec off of 209, lights, all that. It's just very, very expensive. I mean, the township might be able to buy it and have it be the grass, empty land, so preservation, it could work. I'm not sure that doesn't solve the Gaffney Drive problem ever.
The traffic problem.
Yeah.
It just seems like as you enter Smithfield Township and you come to Buttermilk Falls, which is what we were talking about last meeting, that could be a real beautiful way to welcome people to the town.
Well, that's where the township building used to be on the other side. Township sold that property a decade ago, right?
Well, that doesn't mean it was the right decision, Jack.
We could build like an arch like in St. Louis.
All right, so, that's
Polka
point.
golden arches.
The reality is, by the way, to that point, just before you end it, if these guys can't do this, then lose their permit, then it might be available for cheaper, it's possible.
And we could condemn.
No.
They're not there, they can't shoot us. Sorry. I kid, kind of, 60% kid.
All right, motion to table.
All right, table. All right, and moving.
I second the motion.
All right, vote,
All.
thank you. All right,
New business.
do we have new business? Update River Edge Park online survey, Alex.
Yep, there's a Rivers Edge Park survey that's live, and I need all of you to please complete it, and everyone in the audience, if you could complete the survey. And it is open through the first week of January, and it's online now. It's right on our homepage on the banner. I've also provided a QR code on the table. It probably would only take 5 minutes. The more detail, the better. There's open fields to collaborate. There's a lot of, and the more feedback that supervisors can get, the better. We have a question for Ed.
Please.
It's in reference to the survey. We went in, I went in, a few others of us that live down Price's Landing. And especially for mine, I put in my address, I have a copy of it. Doesn't pull me up where I live. On Price's Landing Road. Pulls me up on Lloyd's Lane. Brought you a printout. Went in today with the GIS. And that also still brings the township all the way down through past us as the property. Go out to the end
And the GIS doesn't even show any of our mailboxes or our road sign or anything. It wiped us completely off, like we don't exist on that road. So I called Monroe County, spoke to a gentleman there. He tells me, oh, just fill it out, go down to the bottom, box 9, and do a notation. Now, we have 17 residents that live down there. I asked my neighbors, we're not gonna fill out using the computer or on site. We're gonna manually fill them out. And I will bring them in and hand them in physically, that I want it recorded.
Okay.
Because I don't understand where this comes and why it comes up the way it comes up.
Or how these maps generated, you know?
Sorry.
How are these maps generated?
That's using the GIS.
Oh, yeah.
We have
GIS.
physical copies out on the foyer there. I'd be happy to hand and print out as many as you need if you want
I
to.
printed them all out, I'll hand them to my neighbors,
Okay, yeah,
because we're having another meeting,
okay. Good.
but
Can you hand those in at the township here, or is that a courthouse thing?
That's
No,
here.
it's here. Yeah, everything is brought to the township.
Okay.
So if the residents
those?
wanna,
But that was one of my questions when we were discussing it, and Mr. Dwyer was sitting over there. He says, oh, you just put your address in and it'll drop a pin right to where you live.
it's, it seems like I'll have to look into it. And see if we can work out any issues with the GIS. This is the first, issue that I've heard of. So far, 50 people, or over 50 people have completed it, but yours is first. I can look into it. But like you said, the paper copy is a viable alternative. And we can even make fillable PDFs if you'd like, so that, you know, instead of having to print it out and handwrite it, you can type it as well. So I can look into making that as an option for people as well. That should not be a problem.
Well, like I said, I've already discussed it with the neighbors, everybody knows not to fill it out, and I'll hand them
Make sure you
copies.
do fill it out, because you want your input though.
We'll fill it out.
Okay.
Yeah. We want as many people to participate as possible. So I'm sorry that it appears there may be a barrier. I'll have to look into it, but I'm
Well,
glad
it's
that
funny
you're.
that it's only our location that's the barrier.
I don't think that's right. I think I had trouble with it too, but for me, it didn't seem as crucial.
Mhm.
You know, it was more important to get the information on the survey out than the actual location where I live.
Yeah, I mean, this thing calls something Hogan Drive, it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, this map, I don't know where this map comes from, but that's not right. There is no Hogan Drive anymore. That's a cart path in Shawnee.
I think ours,
Worthington is even listed.
ours probably is a little more pertinent
Oh, I
because
see,
it's
yeah.
where it's all taking place at.
It's dated. The map that they're using appears to be dated significantly. So I can I can see if there's a way to update it. If not,
This is the survey company.
yeah. It's one feature of the survey. So it's, beyond, yeah. So I think that you can manually enter your address as well. There's fillable fields on the bottom that say name, address, any other.
Yeah, I
info
did, like I said, I did enter it manually,
Okay,
and the pin that it dropped was not my location.
okay. And then at the end of the survey, there's a few questions, I think, that are just kind of, that say optional in parentheses. And in there, you can simply write, this is my physical address. There's a discrepancy with the GIS map. So that's also an option. So, and we will go through all the surveys that we get manually, and if somebody types that in there, we will make sure that what they write in there is correct. So we will spend time making sure everything is, all our I's are dotted and T's are crossed. But I appreciate you bringing that to my attention.
Does that work for you? We'll take care of it if you bring it to us.
Yeah, we'll be present for
When is the next meeting on that? Is it December?
Yeah, December
that,
11th.
December 11th.
I wasn't sure if there's one more before that.
Not unless you go up to Middle Smithfield.
They're having a meeting?
Well, that's the next park meeting.
Is that?
But ours for this, for the bike park is December 11th here
Okay, yeah,
with the supervisors.
yes,
So it's a time of a couple months.
Thank you. Any other comments?
About the survey?
Yeah.
Specifically about the.
yes, survey,
We're
and
still
then we're
on
gonna
the
public
survey?
comment.
Yeah. Well, no, public comments.
Oh, well, let's,
I don't think we
Table
closed
survey.
out the online survey.
oh, it's tabled, survey's done, okay, sorry, public comment.
Any other comments? What do you guys,
Sorry, Brad.
what was you here? Please.
I have a few questions. If we can, revisit the, open space inventory list. That you were referring to, I believe, I don't know if it was the last meeting or the meeting before, I thought James was gonna go through it and identify the owners of the properties on that list, am I remembering that
Yeah,
correctly?
I've done that. I submitted them to Alex.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and you said that you reached out to someone on that list, one of the owners,
I did.
and can I ask what the conversation was?
I just mentioned that the township might have some interest in the property, but I didn't get any feedback.
Right, okay.
That was it.
Okay, and then, Brett, you said that you reached out to one of the owners of Buttermilk Falls.
Yeah,
And again, was that the same type of conversation? Would you be interested in selling?
right.
So is that,
Exactly.
I don't know what the regulation is, but is that, like, speaking on behalf of the township, it seems a little premature and it concerns me a little bit, so I'm just looking for some guidance on
Yeah,
that.
I mean, me too, we had talked about if you know the owner and want to talk to them, and I think that's what I heard from you, James, you know them, but or do you not know?
I know them.
Yeah, I mean, if you know somebody who say, "Hey, we're talking about these properties, your property's on the list," yeah,
Right,
it's fine, that's two
Right.
citizens. But I don't think anyone should be reaching out to anybody that they don't know.
I
right,
did it as a person, as a private
Yeah.
citizen.
As long, I mean, you have the right to do whatever you want, as long as you're not doing it in the EAC's name or in the township's name. I mean, this is public forum, so they can look it up and say that, yes, these lists, your address is on the list.
I was told that any offers will be entertained. By the,
who was it that you spoke with?
it was the Realtor, who actually was, at that point, it was several months ago, who was, managing the 630 Seven Bridges Road as part of
Right.
the property. And they have, actually,
Representing the Schickman family or?
no, it was yeah, I think so.
Right,
And, yeah, and they were entertaining a couple other offers, one of the businesses up on, the Gateway had a tentative hold on the property for whatever.
right.
And they said they're entertaining that, and if you got something else, bring it down, so.
Is it possible for us to get a copy of that list or what? I'm still unclear on all of the committees and councils, what documents we're able to look at as residents
Yeah,
that you guys are looking
I
at.
think we talked about this, too. I think the challenge with that list is that.
Yeah.
If you get it out there, like. That. We wanna buy a property, it goes astronomical in price. Or it scares people off. I do know, so there's certain things that don't go under, the sunshine law, and it's procurement is one of them, and contract negotiation. because-
There seems to be some logic to that.
Yeah, so if you're gonna negotiate a contract, you don't have to get into the details of it, because you're
Right.
divulging, and effectively the township can lose
Right.
money.
Right,
By
yeah, so
doing
that
this.
list would be proprietary.
Right.
Yeah, it's
But-
internal.
That makes sense.
Internal notes.
Yeah, that and HR and legal.
Right.
Sort of from, in my back of my head, like, cause I'm still learning what I shouldn't be sharing.
Yeah,
Are those three. generally.
Yep.
Sorry.
But yeah, I hope it's sort of the goal that we shouldn't be really going after anyone. If there's like conversations you wanna have because you know the person and are curious, that's okay as an individual. But I don't think we're at a stage where we should be having conversations with individuals
I agree.
about procuring the land. And also because there may never be any money to do it as well, so.
And then just one last question, when James shared the ownership information with Alex, was that shared back with the committee as a whole?
I'm serious.
James shared some documents with me that I'm in the process of reviewing.
Right,
So ownership information,
okay.
things of that nature, but I believe they fall in the same category that Michael just mentioned as being potentially sensitive information.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not asking for, but just to lead back to what Mitch was saying about, you know, do we start with this list? And James was saying we start with the map, and Michael, you suggested see who owns what and eliminate anything that on the list, the existing list, that would be unfeasible. So it seems to me like you already have the information to do that. So you can start with the list and then James can do his thing with the map too, but
Yeah.
Correct, and then
it seems like there could be some
conversation we were having
movement
with
maybe.
Mitch was around, a process for sort of prioritizing potentially
Right,
on that list
criteria.
as well as new
Right.
ones.
Right, but it seems to me like since you have the ownership information and the list and Mitch's criteria, you could start weeding some of the properties out on the list
Yeah, I
before
think-
you add to the list.
I think in the next meeting,
Right.
that prioritization should be pretty close.
Right,
I personally don't feel comfortable with the prioritization as listed because environmental protection is like 1 point out of possible 50, so I think that,
That was a document
Yeah.
to explain
Correct.
the process.
so I hate to take that and assign it to this and then get some information that's not really relevant.
right,
And I'm crossing the properties off, it's an old list.
Mhm.
And I'm crossing off properties as I am reviewing the list, and some of the stuff is not current, so.
I mean, in an ideal world, we would have a land trust organization that we've done, sort of go through this on their computer and go, that land was sold a year
Yeah,
ago to
right.
this, forget about it. It's, you know, that land's been there for 25 years and it's gone on sale 10 different times. And it meets all those criteria. You might want to oh, and somebody knows this person, you probably want to reach out. That's what we sort of need
right,
to do.
right.
That's the information I gave to them.
It's MLS, right? Is that?
No.
Yeah, James should share some info. When the committee meets, we have, it's a couple dozen files, and I did start looking through them, and we greatly appreciate that, you know, that assistance, the technical assistance, and it has some very good information on there.
It has the history of the property,
Exactly, yeah.
which is very helpful.
Yeah, you need that history. Knowing how many times it went out for sale is indicative of interest in selling.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It comes through, where'd you get that through?
You gave it to
I gave it to you. I gave it, no, Alex gave it.
So before you all leave, just please exchange numbers with Mitch so that he can reach out to you between now and your next
Take
meeting.
a vote to end the meeting?
Can we could just put it on a piece of paper? Can we just write all the phone numbers down?
Sure.
Piece of paper and then
Yes.
make a copy and then we can,
Right here.
Just you can do it on the back.
Don't group text, please.
Group text. They're horrible. Group text is the worst.
Do you want to make the motion to adjourn?